I'm Sierra Domb, founder of the Visual Snow Initiative, also known as VSI. VSI is a nonprofit organization dedicated to global awareness, education, resources, patient advocacy, treatment development, and research for visual snow syndrome, or VSS. An estimated 2 to 3% of the world's population is affected by VSS, which is a neurological disorder that can impact an individual's vision, hearing, cognition, sensory processing, and quality of life. Our ultimate goal is to find a cure for VSS and help those with the condition along the way. Collaborating with physicians and scientists, we have funded research in 7 countries, leading to the recognition of VSS as a distinct neurological condition with both visual and non-visual symptoms, discoveries about its biological basis, pathophysiology, and viable treatments where none previously existed. As we continue to find solutions, we also create physician-patient resources, such as the first diagnostic criteria for VSS, the first global directory of VSS physicians, the first VSS brochures designed for medical professionals and patients available in multiple languages, as well as educational multimedia content and videos to boost awareness and health literacy for VSS. Formed shortly after founding VSI in 2018, our global research team consists of experienced and passionate physicians, scientists, and researchers from around the world who are dedicated to studying visual snow syndrome and finding a cure. Their areas of exploration include symptomatology, pathophysiology, brain network mechanisms, neurotransmitters, biomarkers, and treatments. Their fields of expertise include neurology, neuro-ophthalmology, ophthalmology, optometry, neuroscience, neurobiology, and advanced technology. I started this organization in 2018 after experiencing the onset of VSS, and it completely derailed my life. Although VSS can affect us all differently depending on which symptoms we experience, their intensity, medical history, and more, I, like many others with this condition, experienced a debilitating form of VSS at that time. I had no idea what was wrong with me and had never even heard of VSS before. In pursuit of answers, unfortunately, I found out the same was true for most of the medical community. I endured marginalization, misdiagnosis, mistreatment, costly and intrusive medical testing that seemed endless, and emotional trauma, all because mainstream medicine knew nothing about my condition. Because education about VSS was absent, my symptoms were falsely attributed to other conditions. I was told I may have a degenerative disease that would cause me to go blind or die, which ended up being untrue. I was also met with skepticism, as well as harmful and offensive implications that I was imagining these symptoms, all because at that time traditional testing methods and modern medicine refused to accept that VSS is a real neurological condition. And with the absence of published evidence, such as clinical data and supporting imaging, VSS would remain unaccepted by the majority of the medical and scientific communities. Many individuals with VSS continued to be misdiagnosed with standard migraine aura, despite the absence of migraine, and even migraine aura for many VSS patients. And while there may be a potential biological connection between the two, VSS's symptomatology is distinct from that of migraine and migraine aura. The majority of VSS patients received no diagnosis, left without answers as to what was wrong and what was going to happen to them. VSS symptoms were also falsely attributed to structural eye issues when it was actually a brain disorder the entire time. Many of us needed answers, resources, and information about what was going on with our health and hope that things could get better. My story mirrors that of millions of people of all ages worldwide, many of whom, like me, went on for years thinking that we were alone. Finding out that I wasn't alone and navigating my own harrowing VSS journey, I didn't want others to have to endure the same nightmare that I had. Candidly, I also wanted vindication for all of us, to prove that our condition was real all along to everyone who's ever doubted us. And importantly, I felt that if I didn't try and put forth effort, then nothing would change. That was why I organized the first ever Visual Snow conference and then founded VSI in 2018. A year later in 2019, I was interviewed about visual snow syndrome and my work through VSI. The interviewer, Ian Alexander, asked me if you could collaborate with or get the support of anyone for your initiative, who would that person be? And within my response, I stated the World Health Organization. I knew that when it came to getting the medical and scientific communities to believe that visual snow syndrome was real, we would need the support of global health entities like the World Health Organization. I thought about all the times I sat in doctors' offices feeling discarded, hopeless, and misunderstood. I thought about how many people probably felt similarly, and that's why I did everything in my power to advocate that VSS is real. I knew that we needed to get VSS in the International Classification of Diseases. Maintained by the World Health Organization, or WHO, the International Classification of Diseases, or ICD, is a standardized system healthcare providers use to classify and code medical conditions, diseases, and injuries. The ICD is a critical tool for clinicians to diagnose, monitor, and treat patients. The latest edition of the ICD is called ICD-11. Including VSS in the ICD significantly benefits VSS patients, healthcare providers, and researchers in numerous ways. This includes getting VSS patients eligibility for insurance coverage and financial support, a cause that has always been deeply personal and important to me. Increased awareness and education, global standardization, improved diagnosis, treatment, and research, recognition across fields of medicine, the development of further helpful interventions, and monitoring data related to VSS in order to improve healthcare outcomes worldwide. And importantly, an ICD code means that from a legal, scientific, and medical perspective, visual snow syndrome is recognized and considered legitimate on a global scale. VSS has gained significant academic, clinical, and scientific legitimacy in recent years, but although we have achieved monumental progress, awareness, and advancements in identifying, understanding, and treating VSS, an ICD code for VSS would be a game changer. Without an ICD code, it's as if VSS does not truly exist. Visual snow syndrome has never had its own ICD code. In fact, historically, VSS has been classified as unspecified visual disturbances, unspecified subjective visual disturbances, or other visual disturbances. I've always been adamant that these labels do not do VSS justice. Not having an ICD code means that people with VSS cannot be treated equally compared to those who have an ICD code for their medical condition. The absence of an ICD code for VSS also problematically contributes to the stigma that any suffering associated with VSS is simply all in your head, an archaic stigma that we have worked so hard to overcome. VSS is a real, distinct, and measurable neurological phenomenon with its own name. This was proven by international researchers and substantiated via the scientific studies that VSI has funded. The absence of an ICD code for VSS harmfully perpetuates doubt, primitive notions, and ambiguity for a proper diagnosis. It also continues to create barriers for VSS patients to receive proper care they deserve. This poses a serious risk to their physical and mental health. We've known VSS was real all along, but often paid a price because others didn't recognize that. Without legitimacy for VSS, countless patients and their loved ones around the world have been negatively impacted, engulfed in confusion, isolation, and stress. Researchers who maintained that VSS was real and studied the condition were also often dismissed and underfunded. It has been a deeply important, long-time goal of mine to get visual snow syndrome included in the ICD. Years ago, when I first got VSS, it wouldn't have been feasible because the medical community needed scientific evidence that VSS was real. At that time, VSS experts told me it would take roughly 30 to 50 years if we were lucky, as this is something that is often the time frame for other underfunded and misunderstood medical conditions. Despite this, my team and I remained unwavering in our pursuit of an ICD code for VSS, tirelessly advocating and collaborating alongside VSS experts and our generous supporters to produce funding, awareness, education, resources, research, and treatment options for VSS. Thanks to everyone's collective efforts, tremendous strides have been made in all these areas. We have substantiated and scientifically proven that VSS is indeed a legitimate medical condition with visual and non-visual symptoms. Measurable differences in the brains of people with VSS versus those without have also been identified. At this point, VSS experts agree with me that there is finally enough evidence, awareness, and education to support our testimony justifying why VSS should receive its own ICD code. And so we have reached the point where VSS has a chance of being recognized by WHO. The Visual Snow Initiative team and I approached and work with our friends and members of our global research team, Dr. Peter Goadsby and Dr. Owen White, in pursuit of this goal. Applying for an ICD code isn't a simple process, but we were up for the challenge. There are many layers of bureaucratic steps and hurdles that have to be overcome before any medical condition, disease, or injury can be designated with an ICD code. Many medical conditions never get one, especially if the condition and patient population have a history of being ignored or misunderstood within the medical community. Upon the submission of an ICD proposal by experts in the field, supporting testimonies, thorough reviews, and numerous steps of voting, it is determined whether or not a code will be given to a specific condition. The WHO oversees the development and maintenance of the ICD, but relies on input from member countries and health professionals to reach a verdict. After being reviewed, the proposal is voted on by the Medical and Scientific Advisory Committee, also known as MSAC, and if it's approved, then the proposal moves on to the final phase, being voted on by the Classification and Statistics Advisory Committee, or CSAC, who are the final determiners if VSS gets an ICD code and what that exact code will be. Submitting our ICD proposal for visual snow syndrome was a collective effort between the Visual Snow Initiative team, including Dr. Peter Goadsby, Dr. Owen White, and myself. Additionally, I would also like to thank and acknowledge everyone who submitted testimonies advocating for the inclusion of VSS in ICD-11. This includes the following people. Representing VSS patients, I had to submit supporting testimony to the World Health Organization, advocating for the inclusion of VSS in the ICD-11. I wanted to share it with you today. In 2015, at 21 years old, my life changed in an instant. As I was driving to university, suddenly, my vision went black. Thankfully, I instinctively pulled my car over to avoid a crash, and the darkness only lasted for a moment. But when my vision returned, the world didn't look the same. My entire visual field was overwhelmed by a frightening overlay of flashing lights, moving particles which resembled dense television static or white noise. This static overlay was unceasing, persistent 24/7, whether my eyes were open or closed. I would later discover this visual phenomenon had a name: visual snow. In the days that followed, other visual and non-visual symptoms appeared, including palinopsia, photophobia, enhanced entoptic phenomenon, diplopia, photopsia, tinnitus, and derealization. Due to the debilitating nature of my symptoms, I was forced to stop attending university. I could no longer see well, function, drive, do anything normally. Fearful I was going blind, or worse, my family and I sought help from dozens of doctors and specialists at many renowned medical institutions. But no one could offer an explanation, let alone a diagnosis. Over the next year and a half, I was subjected to intrusive, costly, and unnecessary medical tests, most of which focused on my eyes. My tests always came back normal. After my medical tests revealed nothing, some doctors simply told me, "Get on with your life," as though they no longer believed me. One doctor even referred me for a psychiatric evaluation. With my own doctors doubting me and no answers, I lived in constant fear and isolation. I realized it was up to me to figure this out. I soon located an article published in a well-known medical journal that described my symptoms with astonishing precision. The article described a medical condition called visual snow syndrome, which can manifest suddenly. Visual snow syndrome, or VSS, is a neurological disorder, which explains why all the tests on my eyes came back normal. Visual snow syndrome can affect vision, hearing, cognition, sensory processing, and quality of life. There is no cure. However, I learned that VSS would not kill me, nor would it cause me to go blind. Soon, it became clear that I was not a medical outlier. My story mirrors that of thousands of people around the world. People of all ages and backgrounds worldwide are affected by VSS. Many have embarked on medical odysseys much like my own. They are distraught from being marginalized, misdiagnosed, and/or not diagnosed. Many are left isolated and traumatized, some to the point of suicide due to the severity of their symptoms and the lack of acknowledgement of the reality and seriousness of their condition by many in the medical community. I knew further awareness, education, research, and solutions for VSS were necessary. In 2018, I organized the first Visual Snow Conference at the University of California, San Francisco. Doctors, researchers, and scientists with knowledge of visual snow syndrome flew in from Australia, Canada, England, and various cities in the United States. The Visual Snow Conference was free to the public, and after remarks from myself and international VSS experts, the audience, made up primarily of VSS patients and their families, fell silent as they were validated and acknowledged for the first time in their lives. Shortly after the conference, I founded the nonprofit organization Visual Snow Initiative, which is dedicated to global awareness, education, resources, patient advocacy, treatment development, and research for VSS. Every day since then, my team and I have worked diligently to facilitate collaboration between physicians and academic institutions, develop solutions alongside researchers, make neuroscience more palatable for everyone, regardless of age or health literacy, raise awareness for VSS via multimedia content, and help people with VSS worldwide. Academics and researchers have identified measurable differences in the brains of those with VSS. Data has also revealed that VSS symptoms are not a manifestation of anxiety and depression. Instead, the debilitating nature of VSS symptoms, coupled with the medical community's historic marginalization of VSS patients, can profoundly and negatively impact their mental health. VSS is a distinct neurological disorder that entails both visual and non-visual symptoms. To date, my nonprofit has heard from people affected by VSS in 93 countries. With rising awareness and education for VSS, the number of people we have been able to reach grows daily. Inclusion of visual snow syndrome in the ICD-11 will provide recognition, legitimacy, and a huge stimulus for this condition's identification, amelioration, as well as the necessary research to diagnose and treat it. This will give a voice to a whole community of patients around the world who have tried in vain to be heard. Dr. Satoshi Kashi, the first reviewer assigned to our case by WHO, supported our proposal. Following his review, the Medical and Scientific Advisory Committee then reviewed our proposal as well. They unanimously recommended accepting the proposal to add visual snow syndrome as a distinct clinical entity in ICD-11 as submitted in the proposal, and also add visual snow to symptoms or signs involving the visual system, under 21 symptoms, signs, or clinical findings not elsewhere classified, in order to accommodate secondary causes of visual snow, which should be differentiated from primary or idiopathic visual snow syndrome. The description of visual snow, the symptom, was suggested as follows. Visual snow is persistent innumerable dots throughout the visual field that appear similar to a grainy or pixelated television static, as one might see on an analog television channel that's out of tune. These tiny dots may be transparent, black and white, or colorful, and are often flickering in a dynamic way. The Statistics and Classification Committee also agreed. I am happy to report that for the first time in history, visual snow syndrome, the neurological condition, and visual snow, which is the primary symptom of the condition, which entails seeing snow-like static in your vision, are both being added to ICD-11 starting in 2025. VSS and VS will now have their own ICD codes. We will find out what these exact codes will be in the future, and of course, the Visual Snow Initiative will be sharing them as soon as WHO provides us with that specific information. As mentioned, the ICD is used by healthcare providers, researchers, policymakers, and public health officials worldwide. Its use extends across various domains, including clinical care, research, policy development, and health information management. The ICD contributes to improved healthcare outcomes, global collaboration, and our understanding of health trends worldwide. Now that VSS has an ICD code, this milestone has achieved numerous significant positive outcomes for individuals affected by VSS, as well as the global scientific and medical communities. VSS will now finally be solidified as a legally recognized, legitimate, and distinct neurological disorder. In addition, healthcare services related to VSS will now become eligible for insurance coverage and reimbursement. Given the high prevalence of marginalization and misdiagnosis, which results in trauma that most people with VSS, like myself, have had to endure, this vindication will help establish a brighter future with better healthcare outcomes for VSS patients. Let's review some of the specific benefits that can become available. Patient safety. Accurate and standardized coding using ICD-11 is essential for patient safety. It helps healthcare providers communicate effectively, reducing the risk of errors and ensuring that patients receive appropriate and timely care. Research and clinical trials. Researchers use ICD-11 codes to categorize and analyze data in clinical trials and research studies. The use of standardized codes allows for the aggregation of data from multiple sources, supporting the development of evidence-based medicine. Insurance and reimbursement. ICD-11 codes are crucial in health insurance reimbursement systems. Proper coding using ICD-11 allows for accurate billing and reimbursement for healthcare services. Standardized classification and coding of medical conditions. ICD-11 offers a standardized and internationally recognized system for classifying medical conditions. Having a specific ICD-11 code ensures consistency in how health conditions like VSS are documented and communicated, facilitating a common language among healthcare professionals globally. Improved data accuracy and clinical documentation. The use of ICD-11 enhances the precision and specificity of clinical documentation. This is crucial for accurately describing a patient's health status, facilitating better communication among healthcare providers, maintaining reliable health records, supporting clinical decision-making, contributing to high-quality patient care, and ensuring appropriate reimbursement for healthcare services. Epidemiological surveillance and research. ICD-11 codes play a crucial role in epidemiological surveillance and research. Health organizations and researchers use these codes to track the prevalence, incidence, and distribution of medical conditions over time and across populations. This information is vital for public health planning, intervention resource allocation, and policy development. Global health statistics. ICD-11 is a key tool for generating global health statistics. It helps in comparing health data across countries and regions, facilitating international collaboration and the sharing of health information. Health information systems. ICD-11 is integrated into health information systems and electronic health records. Having standardized codes in these systems improves interoperability, data exchange, and the overall efficiency of healthcare information management. Clinical decision support. Healthcare providers use ICD-11 codes to support clinical decision-making. The codes help in accurately documenting a patient's health condition, which, in turn, assists healthcare professionals in making informed decisions about diagnosis, treatment, and ongoing care. Public health policy and planning. Governments and healthcare organizations use ICD-11 for public health policy development and planning. It assists in identifying health priorities, allocating resources effectively, and developing strategies to address specific health challenges. Advancements in medical science. ICD is regularly updated to reflect advancements in medical science and changes in disease patterns. ICD-11 includes improvements over its predecessor, ICD-10, and is designed to capture the evolving understanding of health conditions like VSS. Getting an ICD code for visual snow syndrome, the condition, and visual snow, the symptom, is a collective and personal victory, not only as the founder of VSI, but also as a patient who endured anguish, misdiagnoses, and marginalization due to the medical community's dismissal towards VSS. More importantly, legally, visual snow syndrome and visual snow with their own ICD codes is a tremendous victory for both the international VSS and medical communities. I've always wanted to try and prevent the future generation from having to go through what I and so many people with VSS did. Obtaining ICD-11 codes proves that VSS was real all along, and now we will have the benefit to access financial support and equality in healthcare. On behalf of the entire VSI team and VSS researchers, thank you so much for supporting our efforts along the way. This is a massive history-making victory for all of us, and I'm so happy we achieved this milestone together. The VSI team and our friends from around the world are celebrating this significant victory for the global VSS community together with you. Some of them would like to share their further insights and feelings about our achievement. Over to you.
It's extraordinary for me to think that in a relatively short period of time, we've gone from a position where something doesn't exist and it's crazy and you're crazy and everyone involved is crazy, to the World Health Organization says, this is the thing. and not it could be a thing, or we're thinking about it being a thing, or we've got a committee thinking about it being a thing, but the committee's thought about it. And they looked at it, and it is a thing. It's an extraordinary journey, it has to be said, from kind of nothing to something. And it's incredibly rewarding to have seen the whole journey.
The granting of the ICD-11 coding for visual snow syndrome and for the visual snow as a symptom is going to be revolutionary in the investigation and management of visual snow syndrome going forward. Firstly, it codifies it as an absolute phenomenon that needs to be recorded, and it will increase the recognition of the syndrome generally within the medical community. The benefit of that is that it will recognise that the patients have a disorder, and it validates the patient. That is an enormous step forward, and it will be extended to a much larger group of patients than is currently possible. Furthermore, it will make statistical data available to researchers who will be better able to investigate therapies and to evaluate patients and see how they respond to ongoing treatment. So overall, it basically means that visual snow has taken its place alongside other disorders, and that it will be amenable to research, and it will attract more funding for research, particularly so as you know, I believe that visual snow syndrome is our first foray into understanding how the brain processes information, and that it's an area where we can actually get information that will apply to a lot of other diseases and their management.
Having visual snow listed in the ICD-11, that means that there is a name and a number for a visual snow syndrome. So when you have a patient, you can give a clear diagnosis. It will be relevant also for treatment when there is a treatment and you have a diagnosis in the ICD-11 that also will link the treatment directly to the disease. That is important also from a social point, because it means that, for example, insurance companies, etc., would have to recognize visual snow syndrome as something that is really there.
Concerning the integration of the visual snow syndrome into the ICD-11 classification, I think this would be a next step to establish the diagnosis, also beyond the field of neurology. You know, I think there are other specialties involved also, like psychologists treating the anxiety or depression that can go along with it, or ophthalmologists that do a lot of research also in this field. If somebody is on sick leave because of his symptoms, it would make things easier. When
I started doing research, I realized that patient initiatives, they are the key in this topic. And the Visual Snow Initiative is very particular here. So they are extremely active, they are communicating really well, they are putting together all researchers in the world, and I have had excellent contact with them, and very interested also in what we are interested in. And they have been extremely supportive and very, very active, also in communicating and in getting it to the public. And I think this is the way to go to get something for all the patients who are affected by visual snow.
I think the work done by the Visual Snow Initiative is very, very important. On the one hand, they are promoting research, they are connecting researchers worldwide, and they are making the research possible. When there is not enough funding, they support us. So that's something that is really, really great and really helps to the advancement in this field. Also, the work they are doing for the persons that are affected is so important, because I think this really also calms people down, knowing this is something that can happen in visual snow syndrome. This is like the most important part, but also the work they are doing in supporting research is very, very relevant.
To get an ICD code, what we had to do is put together a group. I work with Owen White and with the Visual Snow Initiative to do this, to put the criteria together. We approached them, we spoke to very helpful people, the physicians involved, about what needed to be done. So we need to put it together. We need to put together what the proposed criteria would be for diagnosis, what the basis for saying this was. Why would the World Health Organization even be interested? Why would they do that? How many people have the problem? What's the biology of the problem? What's the unmet need? What's the evidence for that? What's the evidence that would convince people? So we put this package together, and then it goes to a reviewer who's an expert eye doctor. We did it down through the ophthalmology, the vision route, who came back and said, quite simply, yes. He wasn't involved, didn't write it, just saw the evidence and said, yeah, this is a thing. It's clearly a thing. And then it has to get from the reviewer to another committee, a medical committee, that sits together, and they need to vote on whether the proposal that's been reviewed by the reviewer is going to go through their committee. And I'm told they unanimously voted that this is a thing. No one thought it wasn't a thing, which is hard to say. Owen and I expected someone would push back. I guess I'm as surprised as, probably more surprised than anybody else, that someone didn't say, because people have been saying it's nonsense for years, so I thought someone would. But they didn't. The whole committee said, wow, it's a thing. And then it has to go to another committee, which is the top committee, to say, okay, well, the reviewer thinks it's a thing, this is the proposal, the medical committee thinks it's a thing, shall we make it a thing? And they said, we're going to make it a thing.
VSS and VS receiving an ICD code is an incredible advancement in global research and awareness. As a researcher, having an ICD code means that VSS is officially recognized a distinct medical condition. Most of the time, when patients go to their doctor, they are dismissed and misdiagnosed because they are unaware that this condition even exists. Having this validation can help educate healthcare professionals about the syndrome, leading to a better diagnosis, treatment, and potentially a cure. In addition, it also leads to more research being conducted. Research is very expensive and requires a significant funding to continue. We understand that people need a cure and pharmacological treatments, and the VSI is doing everything it can, but it will be much faster and easier now that VSS is recognized as a medical condition in the research community. This recognition will attract research funding from government bodies, private organizations, and pharmaceutical companies. As well, it allows for epidemiological studies, enabling more accurate tracking and reporting of cases worldwide. Currently, many patients from underdeveloped countries mention it to their doctors, but their doctors do not know how to respond as the condition has not even been discussed. With the ICD code, it will actually be known worldwide. I am really proud of how much the VSI has accomplished. We would not have been able to reach this stage without our team, researchers, and most importantly, the VSS community, which is all of you guys watching this video. Just a few years ago, VSS was unknown to many, and it is incredible to see how fast awareness and research are advancing for this condition, all with a little bit of teamwork.
VSS has always deserved its own ICD code, and I'm very happy to be a part of such an amazing accomplishment. Now, both VSS and VS have their own codes. As mentioned, I work in social media, and I constantly see that people are unable to afford current management and treatment options. With the ICD code, insurance coverage will now be available for all of the treatment options that currently exist, making healthcare services more accessible and affordable for patients. In general, the ICD code will lead to greater recognition, which can result in the creation of more support resources, educational materials, and a larger support network for those affected. I'm super happy to be a part of this amazing accomplishment, and it wouldn't have been possible without the VSI team and the general public. Everyone should be very happy about this achievement.
We are so excited that visual snow syndrome has received a ICD-11 designation. It's going to be a powerful tool in your doctor's toolbox so that they can get the proper testing for you, get the proper treatment for you so that you can overcome your visual snow syndrome. We know we have some great testing out there. We're always evolving more testing, but now that we have the code, hopefully it'll allow us to expand what we're able to do to help the patient and also to treat the patient and make their symptoms improve.
It is amazing that in such a short amount of time, visual snow syndrome has been granted an ICD-11 code. It is amazing the work of the Visual Snow Initiative to help make this happen, and it is a benefit to the entire community for them to have this code. So it is an amazing accomplishment for everyone. Patients can now look forward to getting a diagnosis, because sometimes it's the true diagnosis that gives patients some relief, because they now know what it is. It has a name. In addition, they'll be able to, with the diagnosis, physicians will be able to order testing, they'll be able to order treatments because the condition exists to treat. So it's a tremendous change for the entire community.
Not having a diagnosis code and having to put something that is really vague or general in the chart for a diagnosis, it's not helpful when we're trying to share information between professionals. It's not helpful for the patients who are trying to understand, is this a real condition or not? So I think it's pretty clear that because this is a syndrome that is classified by a distinct list of characteristics and symptoms, that it makes sense that we have a diagnosis code for it. I think having that ICD-11 diagnosis code for visual snow syndrome will hopefully help the patients have better insurance coverage for their visits, and hopefully cover other therapies that are shown to treat this condition. But it also helps the patients have a sense of validity in their condition and that it is a real diagnosis. But also, when patients are being passed around between different medical providers and they have to explain each time, or it's not clear, it makes it a little harder for them to get adequate care. I think that it also will help other medical providers understand the significance of the diagnosis.
In many ways, the ICD code is the first of the, you might say, really concrete waypoints in the journey from just something bothersome that one wants to talk about through to a condition we can do something about. Because we're talking the same language. As I say, every government in the world uses this for their health authorities. No one will go around and say, well, it doesn't exist it doesn't exist. They'll have to accept it exists and then work out what the implications are. So very broadly, it's probably the most important step in getting anywhere is to get broad acceptance of the existence of the problem with standard criteria, so that then a clinician can make the diagnosis, the patient can read about it and understand what's going on, see the diagnosis for themselves, and we can use that information, that existence, so to speak, to, I think, supercharge or turbocharge the research efforts. Because once something's a thing, then people accept it needs some management. That means we will have the rocket boosters on to be able to pursue research in this area.
It's interesting because one's not supposed to have a personal level in these areas in many respects. One does it for curiosity and for caring and for compassion, and at a personal level, it lets me turn around to all of my colleagues who say, what the hell are you doing that for? It's just rubbish. They're all psychologically crazy. And I can turn around to them and say, who's crazy now? So there is a certain level of, yes, we were right. There's a certain level of achievement. There's a certain level of satisfaction. But also, without being too sappy about it, I like people and I like being able to help people, and I've always felt that I would like to do something that was significant, and I think this is significant. So there is a sense of personal achievement.
Today, I'm happy to be signing off knowing that VSS finally has its own ICD code for the first time in history, and the validity of our condition can never be questioned again. VSS was real all along, and we proved it together. To stay updated on the latest information about visual snow syndrome and the Visual Snow Initiative, as well as additional resources and a list of all the studies we are funding, please feel free to visit our website, visualsnowinitiative.org. Thank you so much for your continued support, activism, and helping us try to make the world a better place for everyone affected by VSS around the world.